This is probably going to be one of my more important segments. And Nicaragua is under the microscope of America once again. And we're looking to do some imperialism shit. We just did the heavy meddling segment not too long ago. And it didn't take long. It didn't take long for this to show its face. Now, I'm not saying this is exactly what's happening, but we have some mixed reviews on both sides. And truthfully, I wish I could just snap my fingers and everybody had already read the manufacturing consent book because it points out case by case scenario all the way back to Vietnam of horrible atrocities we've committed on all sorts of levels because of capitalism, because this is what it morphs into. This is the machine of capitalism. It turns into an empire, which empires feed off imperialism. And let's get into it. So Nicaragua is under the microscope of America. Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, released a statement recently saying the U.S. is acting to promote accountability for Nicaraguan officials in the wake of the November 7th sham election in Nicaragua. Today, the Department of Treasury Office of Foreign Assets Control imposed sanctions against Nicaraguan public ministry and 9 Nicaraguan government officials. On November 7th, the Ortega Murillo government held an election that denied Nicaraguans their ability to vote in free and fair elections, following months of repression and imprisonment of 39 individuals, including 7 potential presidential candidates, opposition members, journalists, students, and members of civil society. So, yeah, that sounds really bad. And that's how they manufacture consent. They tell you, again, I don't know that if this is false or true, but it's the blueprint for what usually takes place. And it's our recipe for, doing what we do so we could destabilize a place and bring our corporations in to do business and make it available to do business. So what's interesting is recently Joe Biden signed the Renaissance Act, and that allows us to place sanctions on Nicaragua and the Ortega government. What's more interesting is these 2 individuals from the Convo Couch, which basically does election integrity, I guess you can say, and among other things. I'm not really familiar with them, but they were on the Jimmy Dore show recently, and they were in Nicaragua for the elections. And what they observed was a really free and fair election, according to them, and Ben Norton, and there was a number of other people there. But what they said was that they took the American problems of what Republicans complain about and Democrats complain about, and they kind of made it all work. They said that they had to be IDs, which is a Republican thing, but you didn't have to have it there. You just pull up their ID and you could basically have them vote off that. Then they got a stick, like a black stamp on their finger that wouldn't wash off for days. So they know that you can't vote multiple times. Some other things that they mentioned were that they had multiple parties in the room, in each election room, and where your vote was casted, your vote was counted immediately. Thought that was pretty interesting. And like if there was a right party, like in America, if there was a right party, a left party, and a libertarian, maybe a green party, they were all present in the room as it was going on. So no moving ballots here and there, none of that. It was very well put together according to them. And again, they were there. So that's important to realize with now they said that they jailed these they're making Ortega out to be some dictator that jailed his opposition and a number of other people. But what they said was that they were calling these people pre-candidates, and they weren't. These people weren't even registered to vote. I mean, to run for president. So they're just making up shit, according to the Convo Couch and what they said, Fiorella and Craig. So, who are you to believe? The propaganda that's once again showing its face in America. And again, like I said, in manufacturing consent, they basically show you the worthy victims and unworthy victims. And the unworthy victims are the people that are getting abused in countries that we are already a client, that it's already a client state of ours. So they're already doing business with us. So we don't really tend to pay attention to those ones. Even if it's a bigger atrocity, we only focus on the smaller or more beneficial atrocities that could take place and help us out. So who do you believe? I know what I believe. I believe history. You're talking about the same Nicaraguans that we've armed the Contras to take down the Sandinistas in the Reagan era, and the same Nicaragua that we used to funnel drugs to, or actually used drugs to fund the Contra war because he didn't know how he was going to come up with the money. And Gary Webb, the journalist that covered all of this, was murdered. They said it was death by suicide, but he had 2 bullets in his head. But he did some amazing work, and that's on the movie Kill the Messenger. And I believe he has a book about it too. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. But yeah, he covered this whole story, and it's all public information. A lot of this stuff is public information too. It might take you a second to find it, but a lot of this stuff is public information, if not all of it. And yeah, I mean, how are we as the United States to look over here, place sanctions on it? Let's just talk about sanctions for a second, actually. Sanctions are an act of war. Sanctions are terrible, all right? Sanctions starve people. Sanctions are actually racist. They're one of the most racist things we can do, because when we starve people of food, and not just Nicaragua, but in all the countries that we do it, we do so much. We place so many sanctions on countries that it deprives them of medicine, deprives them of food. And to be quite frank with you, of brown and black countries, to be quite honest, I'd rather you just put a bullet in my head or drop a bomb on my head if it's going to come down to that, before you starve me and my family. So sanctions are made to not hurt the government. It hurts the poor people that are a part of the government. They're the people that suffer the worst. And honestly, in all these interventions, that's actually what happens. The people suffer the worst as a result of whatever takes place, just to destabilize these regions, just to go in and make them open up their markets to capitalism in our corporations. And if you're one of those people that believe that, hey man, this is just the way it works, well then I disagree with you wholeheartedly, because then you don't really know what capitalism is and how this is just going to keep morphing into a bigger and bigger problem as it has. And I'll explain it to you in a second with this one other thing I'm going to do before we get out of here. But the reason that lots of people are in support of the Sandinistas government and whatnot are because they increase schools, they increase road production, they produce free universities, they even have health for all, Medicare for all in Nicaragua. Mind you, it's the second poorest country in Latin America. So this is it's a combination. It's multifaceted. They want to do business. They also don't want to show you socialism works in these countries. I mean, because if you have a second poorest country in Latin America outshining one of the richest countries in the world, well, what does that tell you right there? It's going to tell you that our economic system could use tweaks and adjustments. But that's not beneficial to the people that have bought the whole government and are trying to take over everything. They're trying to own everything. So I just got a couple things I want to read off before we stop here. But yeah, they do that's the common thing that goes on in all of these places. They're trying to bring social services to their people. They're trying to give them education. They're trying to give them health. They're trying to give them, a decent standard of living. But it's never been about democracy, and it's never been about, equality and humanitarianism. It's just not about that. And their actions are speaking louder than words, and that's how you know. And you follow the money. So Michael Parenti wrote this thing on empire, right? As America has become an empire. And I thought it was interesting to share. Empire seems to mean, when most of these people write about it, it means simply dominion and power. What is missing from public discourse is the process of empire, and even more important, the political economic content. So you have everybody using this word now, empire. There's another word that's missing and is closely related to empire. That word is imperialism. How can you talk about empire without ever mentioning imperialism? Because imperialism is the process of empire. It's like going to a medical conference of pulmonary specialists and they're talking about lungs but never mention breathing. Imperialism isn't just the process, it's the political economic content. Imperialism is when ruling interests of one country expropriates the land, the labor, the natural resources, the capital, and the markets of another country. So empire is not just about power. Empires are enormously costly for the common populace, both for the targeted country and for the imperial country itself. The empire feeds off its republic's resources. Where do you think the empire comes from? It comes from the republic. Where did they get the money for these 380 military bases and these bombs, killings, shootings, and destructions? They get it from our tax dollars. The people pay the taxes and do without essentials so that the patricians can pursue their far-off plunder, and the center is bled so the perimeter can expand and expand and expand. And that was a lecture that he gave in 2008. So you could see how it was only 380, or I should say already 380 military bases in 2008. And now we're up to we're rounding the last turn to 1,000 military bases. So that's how far and we've come and grown. That's not always a good thing when your military could literally cut its budget in half and still be spending well over anybody else, any of our competitors. And then there's money coming up missing all the time. Classified, not classified, whatever. But this is the problem. For every bomb we produce, it's less money for our people. So as your empire expands and gets bigger, the people grow more hungry. Wages get cut, all these jobs. Capitalism has shipped off so many damn jobs. I don't think there's a single Nike factory left in America right now. They're gone. I think they've been gone, actually. Because who the hell wants to pay somebody $10 or $11, $15 an hour when you could pay them 15 cents an hour in Indonesia or wherever the hell their factories are? And that's the same for a lot of jobs. That's the same for millions of jobs. So study not only socialism, study the critiques of capitalism. Just do that. Do yourself a favor and just do that. Because 80% of the people are living paycheck to paycheck. So that tells you it's affecting at least 80% of our workers that are living paycheck to paycheck. And actually, it's worse than that. That's what Occupy Wall Street was all about. It's about capitalism, about the 1% versus the 99%. I mean, do we have to let it get to 1% versus 99%? And do we have to keep killing all these countries? Angola, even if we fund a death squad or do it ourselves, direct intervention, it always turns out bad. Like I just said, Angola, we had millions of deaths. I wasn't even aware of a lot of this. I just keep digging deeper and deeper, but it's all public information. Again, you can look up all this. Mozambique, we killed like 2 million people there, I believe. We were responsible for all of these atrocities in some way or another. And there's millions of bodies. Look at what we did to Africa. 50 out of the 53 countries We've armed these thugs and these rebels, and they destabilize the regions, and so we can come in there and exploit their mineral wealth and all of that stuff. And that's what we've been doing for the last half a century or longer. But we're everywhere. Like I just said, over almost 1,000 military bases all over the world. Surveillance system, crazy. Authoritarianism, everything. It's no wonder why they're trying to divide us. Because the only kryptonite to the capitalist system is unity. Because if we're all protesting the capitalist system, then they're going to have to react. Because whether you know it or not, public opinion very much matters. It very much matters. One more thing before we get out of here, because yeah, like I said, I'm not saying that this is exactly what we're doing in this particular case, because these people, they're getting smeared all over the place. So, but it's just very interesting to me how they smear these people. They have a smear piece ready right as they present their information. Fiorella and Craig posted something on Facebook. They said that was immediately stamped misinformation. So they're controlling the narrative. They're just trying to, make you believe that, hey, America is Superman. We're doing everything right. Don't worry about it. Just go back to sleep while we do our thing and keep making our money. But that's not going to be good for climate change. We're never going to address climate change as a final result if we keep doing this bullshit and letting the military produce more emissions than 140 countries combined, which Nancy Pelosi just choked on that question the other day. All right. In 20 years since 9/11, I just want to touch on the destruction that we create. In the last 20 years in 9/11, the U.S. has spent more than 21 trillion with a T on militarization, surveillance, and the repression. At Institute for Policy Studies reported that 21 trillion in the last 20 years. During those 20 years, this is out of another article, during those 20 years, the U.S. and its allies have dropped at least 326,000 bombs and missiles on countries in Greater Middle East and North Africa regions. Iraq, Syria, Afghan, and Yemen have felt it the worst. Lebanon, Libya, Pakistan, Palestine, and Somalia were also targeted. That was out of Mint Press News. You know, and that actually wasn't talking about there was like bombers, and that's not including those. There was a number of things, AC-130s, bombers, a lot of other things that they weren't adding to that list. So do you think that this is actually better keeping us safe? Do you think this is helpful for national security? Because I guess that's the question. Not only are we killing and destroying the planet, but we're also destroying the relationships that at some point right now we're going to need to better the planet, to come together and say, hey, we got to make something right. We got to figure this out. Maybe we have to put the weapons down, do some, nuclear disarming, and let's start addressing these problems that are going to manifest into something I can't even wrap my mind around, mind bending. We have to do something about this. And you don't even have to believe Fiorella and Craig. Believe the history. Believe the history. That's what I do. That's the only reason I'm reporting about it. Because the more you look into history and see all this public information, you realize, wow, there is more to this. There's a lot more to this. And if you have to expropriate people's labor, land, resources to get them to open up to your market so you could come get the best prices, and people are dying in the process, children, innocent civilians all over getting killed by the millions. They don't even have a number for how many. Like I said, man, and even sanctions where we lead up to the interventions are terrible. You're starving people. Man. Long before 9/11, MLK quoted, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death." Yeah, I mean, in so many cases throughout history, the U.S., when they take action and they intervene and launch these regime change wars, every single time those places end up in a worse position. No matter if they got a dictator or whatever, however bad their situation was beforehand, they always end up in a worse position.